and I still can't really comprehend it. A registered nurse who was supposed to be a caretaker took the life of my brother for his own personal, selfish, and twisted gain. Charles Cullen, you are a coward. I am very brave for standing here today, but you yet cannot even look me in the eye and face me.
Well, hey folks, Charles Cullen wasn't just another serial killer. This guy was a predator who was hiding in plain sight, moving from hospital to hospital and leaving a staggering body count in the wake. His professional career lasted 16 years across nearly a dozen different healthcare facilities and a nursing home. And by the time he was caught, he'd confessed to killing at least 40 people. But the real number could be much higher. In fact, some experts believe that he may have murdered hundreds of patients. Now, today he's known as a serial killer in most circles, while some facetiously call him the good nurse. Hey, welcome to Profiling Evil. I'm here in Denver, Colorado for the International Chiefs of Police Conference. Now, I'm coming to you with this twisted tale by Profiling Evil, and I hope you'll take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button down below, and ring the bell so that you get all of our notifications. You know, in Twisted Tales, we're diving into some of these lesser known cases that still can teach us an awful lot. Twisted Tales is something that I created to be a little more than just storytelling. It's about awareness, education, and joining forces to make sense of the senseless. And today we're talking about one of those crazy cases, the case of Charles Cullen, the serial killer nurse, also known as the good nurse. Now, what makes Cullen's case so terrifying is not just the number of lives that he took, but how easily he was able to do it. You see, over and again, hospitals suspected that something was wrong with this guy. Staff were whispering about him. Patients were dying under suspicious circumstances. And yet, instead of stopping him, these hospitals reportedly did something troubling. They let him walk away. No criminal charges, no revoking of his nursing license, just a quiet resignation, a kind of a neutral reference, and a new hospital eager to hire him. Now, the paper trail is maddening. At one hospital, there were insulin overdoses, and those things stopped the moment Cullen left, and yet nobody warned the next facility. Another hospital caught him with lethal meds, and instead of calling police, offered that if he'd resign, they'd give him neutral references. Now, Poison Control explicitly said this is a police matter, but the hospital still waited months to report this thing. They even let him work another shift, knowing that they were going to fire him, but kept him on. Now, detectives later learned that the hospital misled them about records retention. This wasn't just bureaucratic caution. It's a system that was prioritizing liability over lives. And just like that, once again, hospital after hospital, Cullen was free to start killing again. And this case speaks directly to the disturbing reality of the concept I talk about in Wolves in Sheep's Clothing. Because society likes to portray serial killers in a mold that makes sense. Loners, social outcasts, menacing figures lurking in dark alleys. But Cullen was none of those things. He was a soft-spoken, polite, and seemingly unremarkable man. In fact, to his neighbors, he was a man who smiled and exchanged pleasantries. His co-workers said he was a nurse who showed up on time, did his job, and even had their backs when they were facing hard times. But underneath this ordinary exterior was a man who was capable of monstrous crimes. So to understand how Charles Cullen became one of the world's most prolific serial killers, you have to go back to where it all started, in my opinion. In his childhood. You see, Cullen was born in 1960 in West Orange, New Jersey. He was the youngest of 8 children in a struggling religious home. His father was a bus driver who died when Charles was just 7 months old, leaving his mother, an English immigrant, to take care of things. Now, she had come to the U.S. as a war bride after World War II, raising the family. But for Charles, she was his only real source of comfort in an otherwise bleak and miserable childhood. Now, it doesn't make any of this right, but Cullen would later describe his early years as unbearable, saying he felt out of place. He claimed he was bullied constantly, bullied by classmates, neighborhood kids, even the boyfriends of his older sisters. And by the time he was 9 years old, he said he had already attempted suicide by drinking chemicals from a chemistry set. Now think about that. 9 years old and already so hopeless that he wanted to die. Well, when this guy was 17 years old, his mother, the only real connection he had to stability, was also killed. Now, the hospital where she died didn't inform him immediately. Worse, they cremated her body before he could say goodbye to her, and this shattered the guy. I think it would shatter all of us. He later said this was a defining moment in his life and the moment when everything truly fell apart. Now, lost and directionless, Cullen enlisted in the United States Navy in 1978, but it didn't go too well. Life aboard a nuclear submarine is tough for even the most well-adjusted individuals, and Cullen, far from well-adjusted, struggled. He was hazed, he was bullied, he was alienated by fellow sailors. But then came the moment that should have set off alarm bells for everybody around him. One day, his commanding officer found him sitting at the missile control panel, wearing full surgical gear, a mask, gloves, and scrubs. This wasn't a joke. No one knew why he'd done it, and Cullen never gave an explanation. Now, he was disciplined, reassigned, and then eventually medically discharged from the Navy in 1984 after multiple suicide attempts. Now, that should have been a massive red flag for whatever career path he was going to pursue next. But instead, Charles Cullen chooses to become a nurse. So after his discharge from the Navy, he enrolled in school to become a nurse. Tracking the timing and the patterns that emerge is really important here because Cullen's worst acting out overlaps with personal collapse in his life around things like divorce, custody battles, financial ruin, heavy drinking, repeated psych admissions. All of that chaos wasn't slowing him down. It was accelerating him. And his murders started becoming a twisted pressure valve whenever the rest of his world was slipping beyond his control. But despite all his instability, this guy excelled in his studies. He was actually elected president of his class in nursing school, and he graduated in 1987. Now, that same year, he married, and soon the couple had their first daughter. And on the surface, it looked like his life was turning around. But behind closed doors, his soon-to-be ex-wife saw something deeply unsettling. She would later describe Cullen as being erratic, unstable, cruel. She said he tortured their family dogs. He burned his daughter's books. He even spiked drinks with lighter fluid just to see what would happen. And in 1993, she finally left him, taking their 2 older daughters and filing a restraining order against him. She reportedly believed that he was mentally ill. Cullen, of course, denied everything. But by this time, he'd already been working as a nurse for several years. And I'm not going to name the hospitals that he was working at, but you can certainly look up this guy and you can find all the information if it's important to you. But the first job that he landed was at a medical center in New Jersey in 1987. And it didn't take long before this guy started to kill. Because by June of 1988, Charles Cullen had murdered his first known victim. The patient, get this, was a judge who had been admitted to the hospital with a severe case of sunburn. This guy wasn't terminal. He wasn't in excruciating pain. There was flat out no reason for the judge to die. But he did. And from there, Cullen started refining his methodology. He favored a drug called digoxin. It was easy to access in critical care units, and he learned how to hide the withdrawals by opening the system under a need for a benign medication in the same drawer. Now, he would later mention in an interview on 60 Minutes that he could feign the need for something low class, like a Tylenol, for instance, but then take the digoxin instead. Now, he later framed his choices as relieving suffering, but the record says something otherwise, because multiple victims, while they were recovering, some even ready for discharge, weren't terminal or in agony at all. This wasn't mercy. It was manipulation disguised as compassion. And that's kind of what happened to the judge with the sunburn. Cullen injected him with a fatal dose of lidocaine, a drug that's used to treat irregular heartbeats, but it's deadly in the wrong hands. And just like that, the judge died and Cullen got away with murder. And over the next few years, he killed several more patients at another hospital, including an AIDS patient whom he overdosed with insulin. By 1991, hospital administrators started noticing something kind of strange with this guy, because patients were going into insulin shock for no reason at all. Now, the IV bags stored in the supply closets, the hospital discovered had been mysteriously contaminated with the drug. They launched an internal investigation, and though they never proved that Cullen was responsible, they were suspicious enough to force him out of the job. But here's the catch. Instead of alerting police, instead of reporting this guy to the nursing board, they let him resign quietly. Now, according to some speculation, liability was the primary concern. I'll let you think through that and put your comments down below. But from there, Cullen jumped from hospital to hospital, usually changing jobs after he came under suspicion. And at each facility, patients were mysteriously dying under his care. The hospital administrators would quietly let him go, unwilling to take any responsibility. But then along came his final murders, and a co-worker who actually helped get this killer to confess. That co-worker was a woman named Amy, and she never imagined that the man she considered to be a close colleague, the one she trusted more than any other nurse that she was working with, was actually a serial killer. But when the truth about Charles Cullen started to unravel, she knew she had no choice but to help stop him. And that's exactly what this brave woman did. In fact, she met with Cullen when the two were working together as ICU nurses at Somerset Medical Center in New Jersey. She found Cullen to be smart, sarcastic, somebody with an uncanny knowledge of medications, way beyond what most pharmacists had, in her opinion. She described the guy as being quiet, kind of a shy nature, and that set him apart from other nurses. And to Amy, he didn't seem like somebody who was hiding a terrible secret. He just seemed like somebody who was struggling with depression. Now, the two formed a close bond, even confiding in each other about personal struggles they were going through. But everything changed when police investigators approached Amy with alarming information. They showed and shared a disturbing pattern of patient deaths that were linked back to Cullen. One specific case really stood out. It was the Reverend Florian Gall, a patient who had been improving but then suddenly died. At first, Amy couldn't believe that Cullen would be involved in this thing, but when investigators showed her records of the priest's medication withdrawals, it became undeniable. She had to accept that something sinister was going on. Now, at first, she was devastated because Cullen was her friend. He was somebody that she relied on. But now, staring at this hard evidence, she had to face the horrifying reality that he wasn't just making mistakes, he was actually killing people on purpose. And in that moment, she made a choice. Instead of turning away, she agreed to secretly work with detectives and the prosecutor to bring Cullen down. Now, it was probably a really difficult decision for her, and I think she reported at one point that she was sick, stressed, and terrified. But she also knew that if she didn't act, that more patients could die. And as a nurse, she'd sworn to protect her patients. And now she was going to make things right. She actually agreed to wear a wire, and she agreed to meet Cullen at a local restaurant, a moment that would become the turning point in the investigation. Because as the two talked in the restaurant, she confronted him about the deaths, even offering to go with him to the police station so that he could turn himself in. But that's when she said everything shifted. The Charlie that she knew, that soft-spoken, self-deprecating friend, was gone in her opinion. His entire demeanor changed. He became smug, proud, almost like he was enjoying it. And even his eyes looked different to her. They looked darker. And that's when Amy knew it was finally over. There was a great news article about that I want to play right now.
She recorded phone conversations with Cullen and wore a wire at a meeting in this restaurant. The same day, a newspaper article reported that he was being investigated for killing patients.
I said, I know you're guilty. I know. I know you did this. And yet I'm still here. I'll take you down to the station. We'll go together. And he changed. His face just changed.
And what did he say?
He said, I want to go down fighting.
Well, when Cullen was finally arrested in December of 2003, he confessed to killing between 30 to 40 people. Now, some guesstimates of his total victims go into the hundreds, one suggesting 400 victims. When Cullen was questioned about his crimes, he stated, I don't think I would have ever stopped, or I don't know if I would have ever stopped. I've heard it said both ways. But now, this guy will never walk free again. I want you to watch him pleading guilty to murder, because it is pretty astounding what he does in this guilt phase.
For purposes, you wish to plead guilty this morning?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, as I've thought about this case, I'm taken back to the deep resentment this guy had toward the hospital system after his mother's death. And one has to wonder, was Charles Cullen truly targeting individual victims, or was he in some way enacting revenge on the medical institutions themselves, these very places that didn't tell him his mother had died fast enough? Some reports suggest that Cullen's interactions with grieving families were cold and even calloused. And there are some comments about them having to ask him to just leave the room when he came to tell them how their loved one was doing. Investigators and the author of a book called The Good Nurse describe something darker than mercy, though. They think it was all about power and control. Because when the rest of Cullen's life was spinning out of control, and remember those custody fights, depression, failed relationships, Cullen still had one arena where his choices had immediate consequence: the ICU. He could withhold, or he could save lives, or he could poison. That control scratched an itch that nothing else could. And while the hospitals might have worried about liability and the desperation for experienced staff, all of this was creating shadows in which this guy could hide. His bedside manner, according to many family members, was bleak at best, detached at worst. And it makes you wonder if he could see himself as an avenger against the very system that had let him down as a child. Instead of targeting specific people, did he just see every hospital patient as a symbol of the system's failure? I mean, these are really interesting questions. It may have been that he simply was a sociopath who lacked any real feeling. But here are some kind of intriguing discussion points that I'd like you to consider as you think about this case. One is revenge against the medical system. You have to go back and wonder if the death and trauma of his mother's death and the way that the hospital handled it, if it's all true, fueled his subconscious anger toward the institutions that he would go to work for. Could his actions have been a twisted form of justice in his wacky mind? You have to think about apathy toward human life, because if Cullen truly lacked empathy, then his killings may have been purely opportunistic. So I'm left asking the question, did this guy kill simply because he could? Or is he so without feeling that he could just justify it? You have to think about the serial killer psychology versus the personal trauma idea, because many serial killers have childhood trauma. Most don't specifically target hospitals. So does Cullen's case fall into the same pattern as other medical killers? Or was this guy unique, an anomaly that was driven by a personal vendetta? He clearly had indifference to families. And you wonder, why was this bedside manner that was so bad notably detached? Was he struggling with human connection, or did he actively want families to suffer in the same way that he had once suffered? And we got to accept the fact that the cover-ups allowed him to continue to kill. If the hospitals had fired him outright or revoked his license after his first suspicious patient death, it leaves me wondering, would he ever have gone on to kill again? So could hospitals be complicit in this spree by failing to act and only being worried about liability, if in fact that's all what happened? Now, Charles Cullen today is serving multiple life sentences, and the real question that continues to occupy space in my mind is, how many more victims does this guy have out there? Investigators can't put a clean number on it. Many of the records are missing, cases were miscoded, some victims were never exhumed, but seasoned sources put the likely toll well into the hundreds of victims. Cullen himself told 60 Minutes that he didn't know if he would have ever stopped had he not been arrested. That's not mercy, folks. That's compulsion coupled with opportunity. So let's listen to the remainder of his sentence. And I hope you'll take time to enter your comments down below and weigh in on what others are saying.
One day, without you even knowing it, your life will end. And what legacy will you have left behind, sir? A serial murderer, serial killer. You ruin the lives of your family, your children, and many people in this courtroom. You've bloodied and stained the medical profession. Absolutely abhorrent what you did, sir.
And I still can't really comprehend it. A registered nurse who was supposed to be a caretaker took the life of my brother for his own personal, selfish, and twisted gain. Charles Cullen, you are a coward. I am very brave for standing here today, but you yet cannot even look me in the eye and face me.
You are hereby sentenced to New Jersey State Prison to 2 consecutive life sentences, which, with the application of the No Early Release Act, that is NJSA 2C:43-7.2, mandates a period of 85%, or approximately 127 and a half years of parole ineligibility.
No. All he cares about himself and his own children. He doesn't care what he did to our children.
Well, that's it from the International Association of Chiefs of Police here in Denver, Colorado. Remember that you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And for those of you who would like some Profiling Evil while you're on the go, check out our audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Hey, I'm so excited about our new podcast, Gardens of Evil, coming out next month on Gamut. Make sure you tune in, and for a quick moment, let's listen to a 3-minute clip, a little trailer and teaser to get you psyched up about it. I hope you'll subscribe and catch it when it's released.
In a quiet little neighborhood called Northwood lived a man named Arvin Shreve. Northwood was immaculate.
Such perfection that it's hard to even describe.
These homes look like they had their grass clipped with scissors.
And Arvin, a retired award-winning landscaper, was its caretaker. For many residents of Northwood, the warm and charismatic Arvin was a father figure.
I didn't have a dad, and here's this older man, and he would tell me, you can be part of our family, and we want to be part of yours.
But beneath the lush foliage and smiling faces, a great evil had taken root.
The horror that happened inside those homes with such a pretty facade, it just didn't make sense. Such ugliness covered by such beauty.
In July 1991, a young woman walked into a police station and introduced herself to Detective Mike King.
Then, very matter-of-factly, almost as if she was commenting on the weather, she said, "I've been involved with a cult that is sexually abusing children."
We're talking about multiple families and many children.
Not everything in Northwood was as it appeared.
When you hear about a cult stockpiling guns, you think about some of these places where that's turned into violence.
And the gentle, unassuming Arvin was the devil in disguise.
He's proclaiming to be a prophet.
Arvin's message was, if you do all these things for me sexually, then I have the key to get you into heaven.
And I said, we have got to get out of here.
That's easier said than done. I'm Mike King, and I led the investigation into the Zion Society cult to rescue a group of children from the clutches of this destructive sect.
My mom took me to this house. They physically restrained me, and then I never lived with her again.
We were raised that this was right. We believed this was right, didn't know that it was wrong.
On Cult Files, Gardens of Evil, you'll learn how Mike King built a criminal case against and eventually brought down the Zion Society. You'll also hear from many of the survivors of this tragedy as they tell their story in their own words.
If you gained 3 pounds, then you were damned to hell and you were going to get into heaven.
Every hour, it was our whole life. Some form of abuse, emotional, physical, or sexual. Like, I can't think of any time that was just joy.
These brave women continue to share their experiences in order to help and hopefully empower other people.
Keep moving forward. You didn't know any better.
I have to remind myself every day that I need to forgive for me, not for them, but so that I don't destroy my body in hate, I have to let go.
I've dedicated my professional life to protecting children and believe that difficult stories like this have to be told. Gardens of Evil exposes many of the methods used by predatory cult leaders, and my hope is that something like this will never happen again.
Cult Files, Gardens of Evil, a 7-episode series coming this fall, wherever you get podcasts.
Well, don't forget to go over to profilingevil.com and sign up for our BOLO. That's our digital newsletter. And while you're there, check out my books. You can get signed copies of Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult, or She Knew No Fear, or my new book, Wolves in Sheep's Clothing. And if you purchase through the website and you live in the United States, I'll sign it and I'll ship it to you for free. Remember, Christmas is coming up here. So this is a great Christmas gift. And here's a little insider tip. Again, go check out Gardens of Evil. It's going to be great. Hey, thanks for tuning in to Profiling Evil's Twisted Tales, a place where your curiosity and engagement collide. And if you found this video to be intriguing, please hit the like and subscribe button. Ring the bell so that you never miss an update. And please, share Profiling Evil with your friends, because together we can keep uncovering the truth, one story at a time. Hey, thanks for your support. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.